Hey everyone! We are working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content and it is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button right now as we proceed. The Toronto Blue Jays are in absolute turmoil right now, folks, and we're only 8 days into spring training. What was supposed to be a quiet, injury-free camp has turned into a pressure cooker of roster drama, outfield logjams, and question marks that could define the entire 2026 season. Buckle up, because this story has more twists than a roller coaster, and we're breaking down everything you need to know about the madness happening in Florida right now. Let's set the stage. The Blue Jays' spring training was supposed to be simple. Keep everyone healthy, get some work in, and roll into opening day ready to compete in what everyone's calling the most brutal division in baseball. But here's the problem. Nothing is ever simple with this team. The outfield situation has morphed into an absolute nightmare scenario that has fans, analysts, and even the players themselves scratching their heads trying to figure out who's playing where and when. At the center of this storm is Nathan Lukes, a name that might not have been on your radar until recently, but trust me, you need to pay attention. Lukes was supposed to be a solid depth piece, a reliable glove who could step in when needed and not embarrass himself at the plate. But then the Blue Jays went out and acquired Jesus Sanchez from the Marlins, and suddenly, everything changed. The whispers started immediately. Was Nathan Lukes about to be traded? Was his time in Toronto already over before it really began? Initial reports from insiders like Mitch Bannon suggested that the Sanchez trade might signal the end of the road for Lukes. The outfield was packed, the roster spots were limited, and something had to give. But hold on a second. Because here's where it gets interesting. Despite all the noise, despite all the speculation, insiders on the ground in Florida are now saying that Nathan Lukes isn't going anywhere. In fact, he might play way more than anyone expects. How is that possible when the outfield is already overflowing with talent? Well, let me explain the method to this madness. First, let's talk about who's competing for playing time in this outfield circus. You've got Jesus Sanchez, the new acquisition who's supposed to be a ceiling-raising bat that can change games with one swing. Then there's David Schneider, the fan favorite who had that incredible hot streak last season before coming back down to earth. Throw in Addison Barger, who showed flashes of potential but still has plenty to prove. And of course, you can't forget about George Springer, the veteran who's still clinging to a regular role despite his advancing age and injury history. Oh, and did I mention that Anthony Santander, one of their big off-season signings, is already dealing with an injury? Yeah, it's a mess. So where does Nathan Lukes fit into all of this? Here's the fascinating part. Lukes has something that a lot of these other guys don't have. He's consistent. He's reliable. He's what insiders call a plug-and-play guy who you can leave on the bench for 5 days, throw into a game cold, and he'll give you the exact same performance every single time. That might not sound sexy, but in the grueling 162-game marathon that is a baseball season, that kind of reliability is gold. Managers love players like Lukes because they don't have to worry about them. They know exactly what they're getting, and in tight games late in the season, that peace of mind is priceless. Compare that to someone like Jesus Sanchez or Addison Barger. These are high-variance players. When they're hot, they're unstoppable. But when they're cold, you don't want them anywhere near the batter's box. Can you really afford to keep a guy like that on the bench for a week and then expect him to come through in a clutch situation? Probably not. That's why Lukes has a real chance to carve out significant playing time despite what the depth chart might suggest on paper. And let's talk about that Jesus Sanchez acquisition for a minute, because this move is either going to look brilliant or disastrous by the end of the season. The Blue Jays didn't trade for Sanchez to be a bench bat. They got him because they desperately needed a ceiling raiser, someone who could change the trajectory of a game with one swing. This team has been criticized for years for being too reliant on grinding out wins with defense and pitching while their offense sputtered. Sanchez is supposed to fix that. He's a guy who, when he's locked in, can go toe-to-toe with any pitcher in the league. The plan seems to be starting Sanchez against righties almost every single day, then mixing in Barger and the other lefty bats depending on matchups. Against left-handed pitching? That's where things get murky. Sanchez hasn't exactly been a lefty killer in his career, so expect to see a heavy platoon rotation when southpaws are on the mound. And that's where guys like Nathan Lukes and David Schneider become incredibly valuable. Late in games when you need defense, when you need someone who won't panic in a high-pressure situation, Lukes will be getting the call. But here's the real kicker, the thing that should have every Blue Jays fan both excited and terrified. Injuries are already happening. Anthony Santander, who was supposed to be a cornerstone of this lineup after signing his big contract, is already banged up. Now, to be fair, Santander has a history of playing through minor injuries, but this is exactly the kind of thing that makes outfield depth so critical. Last year, the Blue Jays had to scramble when injuries hit their outfield. Guys like Miles Straw, who was buried on the depth chart in spring training, ended up playing 137 games because the team had no choice. Remember Will Wagner? Alan Roden? Jonathan Clace? These were fringe players who got thrown into action out of desperation, and most fans can barely remember a single game they played. That's the reality of a baseball season. You can plan all you want, but injuries will derail those plans faster than you can say, opening day. The Blue Jays learned that lesson the hard way last year, and they're about to learn it again if they're not careful. Having depth pieces like Nathan Lukes who can step in seamlessly isn't just nice to have, it's essential for survival in a division as brutal as the AL East. Speaking of the AL East, let's zoom out for a second and talk about what the Blue Jays are up against this season. This division is an absolute gauntlet. The Yankees, despite everyone saying they're just running it back, scored 1 billion runs last year and will get Garrett Cole and their other injured starters back eventually. The Red Sox have completely revamped their rotation and their young position players are starting to break out. The Orioles had everything go wrong last year and still managed to stay competitive. And yes, even the Rays, who everyone loves to write off, will somehow find a way to win 85 games and make everyone miserable. Some predictions have the Blue Jays winning 99 games, which would tie their all-time franchise record. That's an incredibly bold prediction, but here's the thing, it's not impossible. This team has the talent. They have the pitching. They have the depth. What they need now is health and for their big acquisitions to actually live up to expectations. If Jesus Sanchez can be the ceiling raiser they need, if Roki Sasaki can even come close to his potential, if Vladimir Guerrero Jr. stays healthy and continues his ridiculous production, this team can absolutely compete for a division title. But let's be real for a second. The margin for error is razor thin. In a division where every single team could realistically finish with a winning record, every decision matters. Every injury matters. Every roster move could be the difference between making the playoffs and watching from home in October. That's why this outfield situation is so fascinating and so important. The Blue Jays need to get it right, and they need to get it right soon. One more wrinkle to consider, David Schneider's role in all of this. Schneider was supposed to be the lefty masher, the guy who could demolish left-handed pitching and earn himself consistent at-bats. But when you dig into his actual numbers, that narrative doesn't really hold up. He's been better against righties in his limited sample size, which complicates things significantly. If Schneider can't be that lefty killer, then what exactly is his role? He's close to the roster bubble, and unlike Nathan Lukes, Schneider doesn't have that same reputation for consistency. He needs to produce, and he needs to produce fast, or he could find himself on the outside looking in when roster cuts come. The other thing worth monitoring, could the Blue Jays make another move? Ross Atkins has surprised everyone before. Nobody saw the Jesus Sanchez trade coming. What if there's another veteran bat out there, someone like the Nick Castellanos types who didn't fit in their previous clubhouse but could thrive in Toronto? Don't rule it out. Spring training deals happen all the time, and if the Blue Jays feel like they need one more piece to solidify this roster, they have the resources to make it happen. As we sit here in mid-February, 8 days into spring training, the Toronto Blue Jays are a team full of questions. Who's playing left field? Who's playing right field? How much will Nathan Lukes actually play? Can Jesus Sanchez be the game changer they need? Will Anthony Santander stay healthy? Can David Schneider prove he belongs? The answers to these questions will define the Blue Jays season, and we're going to find out real soon. One thing's for sure, this is going to be one hell of a ride. The AL East is a bloodbath, the roster is a puzzle with too many pieces, and every single game is going to matter. The Blue Jays are swinging for the fences this year, and we're all along for the journey. So what do you think? Can the Blue Jays figure out this outfield mess and make a real run at the division title? Or are we watching a disaster in slow motion? Drop your predictions in the comments below. Tell me who you think wins the AL East. Tell me if you think Nathan Lukes ends up playing 100 games or gets traded before the deadline. And if you enjoyed this breakdown of the absolute chaos happening in Toronto right now, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you don't miss a single update as this wild season unfolds. The baseball season is almost here, folks, and trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Let's go!